And we are live. Welcome, folks, to episode 3698 of the Survival Podcast. I'll also tell you right out of the gate, it'll be the last episode of the week this week. I usually have an expert council show on Thursday, and it's not a piker problem. I have enough content, barely, but I have enough. Nicole Sauce pointed out to me that a lot of people are going to check out early this week because the 4th lands on a Friday. Hey, I get it. Maybe I'll run a rewind or something, but this will be the last new show of this week, and then we'll be back next week and do it all over again. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about restoring the culture of men with Sonny Puzikas, or restoring the culture of a man is the way that he puts it. And I'll let him explain that. But I think I get why he phrased it a little differently than I did. Me being a marketer, I did it for the title to flow better. But Sonny's a cool dude, man. I've known him for quite a while, but he actually first came into my orbit years before I ever met him or ever spoke to him. Way back at the beginning. I'm talking like right when TSP was founded, or like 2008. I was working with a gentleman named Val Rosnoff, who has a very similar background to Sonny's. And we were doing videos on Russian martial arts and Russian self-defense techniques and things like that. I was learning a lot from Val, and I was asking him about other people that teach what he taught. And Sonny was one of the people that he mentioned. And then my business partner at the time, Neil Franklin, he spoke very highly of him. So when he just kind of ended up in our orbit in the same space with the same people, like through John Willis and all, I was like, wow, that's fortuitous. And then I found out he lives like not that far away. He's like a Texan neighbor, man. You know, it's maybe a couple hours, but for Texas, that's like across the street. So it's really cool to finally get him on the air with us. And we're going to talk about restoring the culture of being a man and what it means to be a man. And this is a big part of what Sonny's teaching, because everybody sees Sonny as this guy that, you know, is in the Russian military and he's teaching self-defense techniques and combat awareness and all. But that's just a piece of a means to an end. We have a real problem with men that don't just step up, stand up, and be men anymore. And it's not, nothing happened to the gene pool, okay? We're the same people we were 100 years ago. We just don't act like it. We have a system that has conditioned men to feel like it's wrong to act like a man. We're going to talk about all of that and more, and why fitness, mental and physical, both are a key component to that. Diet plays into that. You know, if you keep pumping men full of chemicals and female hormones, they're probably not going to act like men. They're going to act a little bit more feminine, and the feminine's fine for feminines, not for masculines. So we're going to talk about that all today. Before we do, let's go ahead and hear from our sponsors of the day. Sponsor of the day, number one today, is Above Phone. You know that your phone is a dirty rat. It's a dirty rat. It rats you out all the time. It reports you to your provider, to your device manufacturer, to the app maker, and then those people conspire to sell your data to other companies and to other governments. You can make it all go away with Above Phone. And if you're an MSB member, you can get $75 off any phone at abovephone.com. You also want to check out the Above Book and the Above tablets. They're great. All of them help you take back your tech. Go to abovephone.com right now and check out their offering. And if you're like, I don't know, Jack, will I be able to handle this newfangled device? It's not familiar to me. I'm a boomer and I'm stuck on, iOS or something like that. You'll be fine. They have an expert who will onboard you to your new device over the phone. It's free when you order from Above Phone. Next up today, let's go ahead and talk about another way to protect yourself and your family. This time, a little bit more concrete and down to the ground, right? With Joel Riles. Joel is a trainer of some amazing protection dogs at Fortress Canine, but he also realizes that some people can't afford a fully trained protection dog. And some people just want their dog to not jump on other people, not eat their chickens, be a good citizen at home and on the homestead. So he also created canineacademy.us. You should check that out. If you go over to canineacademy.us, you can even take a free course called the Problem Solving Library that goes over some of the most common things that people deal with in trying to train dogs. And no matter what you want to train your dog to do, livestock guardian dog, protection dog, a hunting dog, just a good dog at home, all of it starts with core canine obedience. So we recommend that you consider taking the basics course at least. Check it out over at canineacademy.us. And with that, I want to bring our special guest on, Sonny Puzikas, which long time coming, man. I should have got you on here a long time ago.
Well, I was the one kind of slacking on that, because you sent me a long time ago. You go like, just fill out this little questionnaire.
Yeah.
And I think I started 3 separate times filling out, but I never ended it until my wife, God bless her heart, got on my case, and she goes like, dude, Jack is offering you this awesome opportunity to talk to his audience and all that. Why don't you just actually finish something that you started? So here I am. Good to see you, Jack.
Now, having seen you talk to a person insisting they can't hold a plank any longer than they've been holding it, and you didn't complete a form, that's a little off.
Well, how would I say? I'm disciplined, but I'm not organized.
Gotcha. No, I need a shirt. This one says discipline on it, but I need one that says that discipline, not organized. I understand that. Hey, man, can you tell people a little bit about your background before we get into this topic today? Like, who is Sonny Puzikas? You grew up in the former Soviet Union.
Yes.
And you were in the Russian military. Like I said, you have a very similar backstory to a very good friend of mine who I worked with for about 5 years. But for people here, man, they don't know your backstory. Tell them about it.
Sure. So I was born in former Soviet Union in Lithuania back in late 60s. I'm one of those children of that era. I'm of a mixed genetic pool. Some Lithuanian, some Russian, and some even Polish in my gene pool. So I was growing up in the city of Kaunas, Lithuania, which is the second largest city of all of it is like 400,000 people. So it's kind of like smaller than Plano, but it's the second largest city in Lithuania. And it was an interesting place to grow up as a young fella. We had I would say, a very extremely high rate of criminal activity, and it was a rough place, a rough and tumble place. So growing up there, and not being pure-blooded Lithuanian, in school I was bullied pretty heavily and mocked because I'm not pure-blooded. And most people may not be aware of that, but a lot of Eastern European countries that have, liberated themselves from the Soviet oppression, they do have very strong anti-Russian sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
And Lithuania is actually probably on the extreme end of it. So that was actually one of the main reasons why at the tender age of 6, I started learning how to fight, martial arts and all that stuff. And so fast forward, I was drafted into Soviet military, went through basic training, got asked to, if I wanted to try out for a little bit more specialized role within Soviet military, thinking that it was all exoticism and cool uniforms and suppressed weapons. Of course, I signed up for it. They forgot to tell me that we go to wars and people shoot at you.
Yeah.
Small details.
Yeah.
So that was the rest of my military career. I left Soviet military right at the time when Soviet Union was started to fall apart. I returned home. Lithuania at that point already was independent country. There was not much love for the former Soviet special forces, operators in my home country. I got married to my first wife, and in 1993, we immigrated to the United States, and we settled at first in Ohio. Then we moved to Florida, and just like Crockett says, I wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as soon as I could. So eventually, I settled in Texas, and this is where I'm at right now. As far as my professional career, it's I've done a lot of things. After immigrating, I didn't think that any of my skills that I acquired in military service and other things that I was doing, that they would be applicable here in the United States. So I did landscaping, I sold cars, I worked for a little bit of construction until I got a call that someone needed protection, and somehow through someone they knew my background. And I started getting involved in personal protection, otherwise known as bodyguard work. So I did that for a number of years, mostly in a corporate sphere. And through that, people, sometimes I would go to shooting range and whatnot. And some of the guys that were working for me on my details, they would tag on and they started asking me that, I do things a little different. Why don't I teach this or that? And that's how the teaching started. Then I hooked up with Vladimir Vasilyev out of Toronto, Canada. He certified me. He made me as an instructor. And basically, for close to 25 years now, this is what I do as a full-time job. As a professional, I teach, I instruct, I do some consulting on issues surrounding the safety, security, protection, force protection, that kind of stuff. I live in East Texas now, out in the country. We have our own little farm here, a little further away from stupidity and mayhem of the cities. Still learning a lot of things. That's how I met you in person, coming to self-reliance festivals and learning about actually homesteading. I do have my own area of expertise, but when you're old enough, you realize how much more there is to learn in other areas. So I'm forever student in that sense, and that's pretty much it. I'm married for the second time, hopefully last time. I have 2 kids from my first marriage. One of them lives with me, Nick, and we have a 3-year-old daughter with my last wife. And so we live in East Texas here. We go to church. I teach. We shoot guns. We fight. We lift weights. We stay away from stupid as much as possible and try to hang out with people that I feel they bring something positive into our life and our evolution. That's it.
You're like Gen X on steroids, because you're a Gen Xer, but you're a Gen Xer from former Soviet Union, basically Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
And when I was in school, so I'm just a few years younger than you, just a couple. And there was a lot going on with the kind of, I would say, the preamble to the breakup, and a lot of immigrants coming out of Poland, specifically solidarity movement, all of that was going on. And I have to say, the kids that came into our schools from there were the hardest fuckers I've ever met in my life. If somebody said the wrong word to them, they would just pop them. It was very clear that whole part of the world, like growing up there, we thought we had it rough in the coal region and all. And I mean, there was a lot of it too. Yeah. I mean, and to be clear, like where I grew up, like everybody knew who everybody was. It's weird. It was all Eastern European settlement there. So like we had Ukrainians, Lithuanians, Georgians, Polish, and somehow Irish. Like it was just like that was the 5 ethnicities that were heavy there. And everybody looked the same, but everybody knew who everybody was. But man, those guys that came in during that period of time that were kind of fleeing in advanced type, holy crap, those kids were tough. Not necessarily big, just tough mindset.
I mean, life there, I'm not saying, that's another misconception that people think that, living in Soviet Union, we were so oppressed, chains around our necks and all that. No, I mean, it wasn't that terrible. What we didn't have things that most people here take for granted. You know what I mean? Like simple things like having a freaking, I decided I want bananas. I go to the freaking store and I buy bananas.
Yeah.
For us, it was a huge luxury. You know what I mean? Your mom would have to go in the evening to stand in line overnight to be allowed to buy 3 fresh bananas for her kids.
Wow.
And not every family had a car. Parents work. So as a 7-8-year-old kid, you walk to the store a couple of kilometers, and you have your 10 rubles that your mom gave you to buy shit. And then older kids decide that they want your 10 rubles.
Yep.
And fear was not the thing that you could use as an excuse that, Mom, I didn't buy milk, bread, and this and that because other kids. No, you freaking fought. You threw some elbows, and if you got blasted, at least you put in effort to save the dinner for the family.
Yeah. Yeah, you should do a battle on the way out and back because they might want your shit if you've already spent the money too, right? Like,
yeah.
And that's got to affect your attitude when you see how soft people have gotten. And I'm not talking like the Western world is soft in general, but like, man, just between me being a young man, like in my 20s and 30s to now, like that's only 25-ish years. I have seen the backbone just weaken in men. What to you defines the core traits of a man? Because I feel like not everybody, I try not to overgeneralize, but in general, like on the average, young males today do not act like men, in my opinion, from the way I grew up.
They don't. You're absolutely correct. And it's sad. And, we can't blame the young males. We cannot blame those boys. I cannot blame my son who's 15, who's about to turn 16, that he doesn't possess the same masculine traits that, let's say, I grew up with. Because partially it's us as parents that we outsource their education to fucking, and excuse me for my French, but we outsource their education and really modern education, shaping of these young dudes to a system. And that system by no means wants strong men. Strong men are a danger to that system. So the whole feminization of dudes and the whole societal accepted new standard of, we need to eradicate violence, because violence is projected as this one evil occurrence, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is no definition. Like, what about if violence is righteous? What about if it's a violence to protect a young lady from being abducted? Should we eradicate that too? What about violence if your elderly neighbor, someone breaks into their house and you hear it, you in the name of not being a violent person and a good citizen, you just hide under your bed and call 911 and wait while that young lady gets her head smashed with a hammer? What I mean? This is not about being a freaking hero. This is about very, very simple thing. Do the right thing. We were created to be protectors, hunters, providers. And I underline protectors. We are created for that. That is part of our job inherently from the very beginning, from the creation, is to protect those who cannot protect themselves.
I would say that's true in like all higher beings, not just humans. Like you can go down to the animal kingdom. What is the role of a male in a pride of lions? The females do most of the hunting, most of the care for the kids. The old man plays with them a bit. But let the hyenas come, and what's fixing to happen? Violence and, like you say, righteous violence. I'll defend my pride. And you can look into the primates, like the gorillas. That silverback male gorilla. He just sits there munching on some stuff, minding his own business. If like leopards come and threaten the young, that leopard's going to get ripped to shreds.
Yep.
Right. There's not even a second thought. Like, this is my job, and maybe we have some higher reasoning, and maybe we can, maybe at some point that they would completely trigger. We should have some control, but that is our role, especially within our family and our community. If someone weaker than us is being threatened, then our role is to defend them, and I will never apologize for that opinion.
No, Jack, and this is the part of masculinity that somehow in the last 30, 40 years started being projected as a toxic trait.
Yeah.
And I go like, that's not toxic. Actually, the opposite is very much toxic. It's poison. This is what men are supposed to do. Now, how they do it, how we teach them to do it, how we teach them to be measured and not go overboard just because flips the middle finger at your wife doesn't mean that you need to unscrew his head off of his neck.
Yeah.
What I mean? Have some understanding of morality, of ethics, have some understanding of simple laws, and what it's going to do and how it's going to hurt your family when you end up 15 years to life in jail because you didn't like what someone said. But when it comes to all-out violence and some kind of a criminal activity or whatnot, you will see more men now standing and live streaming with their iPhones the assault, the rape happening, and they're not even going to open their mouth. Forget about physical action. They're not even going to open their mouth. They go to say something, coward. They're like, hey, dude, stop doing this. They're not even going to say that.
Yeah. I've always been amazed by that. The number of videos that exist is indicative of the number of people that choose this over actually doing something, right? Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. If I see two men behaving like morons, and it's one-on-one, and they're beating the shit out of each other. Unless one guy's like kicking the other guy's head up against the wall. Yeah, I'm not stupid. I'm not sticking my hand in a dogfight, right?
No.
But when you see things like two dudes like going up on a woman, and there's people standing there looking at it, like I don't know what world that is from. I feel like somebody somewhere along the way picked me up and dropped me in an alternate universe that's even a thing.
No, I get it, in certain situations where there could be risks, right? You see an armed robbery. You have to measure yourself. What are my
one guy and 5 armed dudes? Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? In Russia, we have a saying, when professionals do the job, there is no need for heroes. Because professionals come home and heroes usually are awarded that title after they die. So, I get it. There are exceptions. If you are a 78-year-old dude with a walker, I cannot expect you to jump in and try to protect this poor schmuck who's being robbed at the bus station. That would be unreasonable expectation. But if you're the dude who talks shit on internet, who lifts weights, who's a pro Second Amendment and all that stuff, and you pull out your iPhone and you film it, and you don't do nothing, I'm sorry, dude, but both literally and figuratively, you do not deserve to have balls between your thighs.
Yeah, I would agree. 100%. There's always a evaluation needs to take place. There's a saying, disaster rescue, dead rescuers save no lives. Yeah. So when they form up at like a talk and get ready to actually, and an instant commander takes over, they form the plan before they send one person out to rescue you. So yeah, if I'm sitting there and I'm unarmed and there's 2 guys with guns, I'm probably not going to try to run in there and pretend I'm something that I'm not. And I might even video that because at least I have evidence now. But in my situation, they're probably getting shot. Like, that's the other side of it. Like, I kind of feel like we live in a country where you have an inherent right respected to be able to carry a means of defense. And I don't think if you have no idea what you're doing, you shouldn't just run out and buy a gun and strap it to your ass. Get some training. But I also see that kind of as another level of responsibility because what was the thing? God made men and Sam Colt made them equal. I think that was the old saying, right? Like, it's amazing how quick that calculus shifts, especially if you have, let's say, 2 people assaulting somebody and you're over here. You have an immense tactical advantage in that situation if it's necessary to employ it.
Absolutely. And that's another thing, it's responsibility of men, right? So we're talking about, resurrecting or restoring the culture of a man, right? Man is not animal. Man thinks, man plans, man looks at action versus consequence, and he prepares accordingly. Just to be able to throw a punch or have a gun with 3 extra magazines does not guarantee that, outcome on all levels will be positive. Because if you don't do things right and you go like, I don't give a shit about the law. Well, the law will give a shit about your actions. Like it, dislike it, say that it's just, unjust. Nobody cares. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it is our job to come up with solutions to be able to do things where even the law, even in more liberal parts of the country, looks at it and they go like, he was not an instigator. He gave every chance for this to be de-escalated. He took all the steps where there was no other option but to use these violent means. Mm-hmm. That takes skill. You need to be able to learn how to talk. You need to be able to take a first punch. Because in some parts of this country, especially, or in Western Europe, if you're going to be the one who throws the first punch, most judicial systems will not care what was your, assumption of what's going to happen next. You did not do the de-escalation. And you ask most men today, have you been punched in the face repeatedly in training to see what is your reaction? Not just physical, emotional.
Yeah.
And dudes go like, I'm not fucking crazy. And I go like, well, you're not crazy. You're just stupid.
You're not prepared to get hit. You can always tell when a person takes a shot in the face if it's the first one they ever took. You can instantly see that person, and I'm talking like something knocks them out. Just the jab, right? Like that left jab hits them, and you realize this person's never been hit in the face in their life. They have this, I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of like almost an appalled look.
Yes.
Like I can't believe
this happened.
Like, yeah, I can't believe that happened. Like, he actually hit me for real. Yeah, he hit you for the real. I mean, and if you talk to a guy in the United States today, I guess it all does have something to do with where you grew up. But if you were a kid in the 70s and 80s, you probably answer that question with, yes, I've been hit in the face more than a few times. Even if they didn't train, like, they got hit. I think most men in their 30s today probably would answer that question. If they don't train in some sort of martial art, they would probably answer that, the majority, with a no. I've never been hit in the face. Or, if they have, it's been like somebody backhanded them. It's not like somebody actually tried to harm them.
Yes. And that's, it's the truth. And I'm not saying this is bad. I'm not saying that living in the society that is safer and less, with less, avert violence in our streets, that it's a bad thing off in itself. All right. But the point is that, just because you live in a relatively safe city, in an upscale neighborhood, or out in the country, this is the 21st century. The distances and the fences are not protection from the dudes that live in different environments.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a protection. They are not deterred by it. And like it or dislike it, sometimes we have to go places.
Yeah.
Sometimes we travel and we cross paths with people. And, if you haven't tested yourself, like a lot of people say, I have a creed, right? Let's say a creed is be a manly man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you living that creed? It's not enough to be about it. You have to be it.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk big shit. They, we laugh about it. We have t-shirts to show and all that stuff, right? It's all cool. But do you live that which the t-shirt says? And it doesn't have to be advertised through fucking, viral Instagram or YouTube videos or whatnot. It's actually better if you do that in silence without anyone knowing, because that is the true discipline.
Yeah.
I don't see you or John or many other people in this circle of self-reliance and those kind of things, homesteading, right? Live streaming 18 hours a day showing your hard work. No, it's done in silence, and then you share your lessons, your knowledge that you learned in doing your job. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
So
there's bragging, and they're not the same.
Yeah, I don't need influencers to tell me how to live. I need those who live that to show me how to do it.
Yeah, I would agree. How do you think we got here? I mean, how has Western culture basically undermined masculinity? Because I'm with you. I'm all for a safer society. I'm all for a society where a man can go through his whole life and never have to harm anybody and never get harmed. But I personally think a great way for that to happen would be, the attitude is, if you go hurt somebody, there's probably 20 dudes that are going to step in and make you wish you didn't, right? So if you want a safe society, you want a society where people will intervene on behalf of the weak. Because then the victimizer is like, yeah, there's a real good chance I'm going to turn into the victim myself here, so I'm not going to do that. But we don't have that. We have a society that has become very, very soft. And I feel like most young men, I don't think that it's not in them to be masculine. I think it's been curtailed. I think they've been taught that this is bad. And I think there's been a message too, like, the women don't want you to be that way. And the women all put out their Instagram shit and all, like you were saying earlier, like, that's not what they want. But who do they always end up with? Right? They always end up with the guy that's kind of hard, in the end.
Or at least they seek that kind of guy. Whether they find it or not is a separate story. Right? Yeah. So look, Jack, the way I see it, and I'm gonna go kind of in reverse, right? Okay. Back to the core reason, what I think is what happened. We are being taught now, and our kids are being taught, that we have to be inclusive of everything. We cannot criticize, we cannot say the bad word because it's a hate speech.
Yeah.
And it's being sold under this banner of being a good person, of being full of empathy, full of understanding that we're not all the same. Look, I can fully understand we're not all the same. Okay. Past month was the Rainbow Flag Pride Month and all that stuff. Listen, I don't wish death on those people that chose that path in life because they want to sleep with another man or whatnot. But I have absolutely zero qualms to say that their choice is evil and bad. In the book, it says, don't hate the sinner, hate the sin. And there is a big distinction, but now we are being told, and it's not just now, it's been going on for years, that you become a toxic man if you point out something that you don't like. Mm. So basically, it has removed your ability to have autonomy in categorizing good versus bad. You don't have moral autonomy. The state took over the autonomy of saying that we will decide what you will accept. Not only you will accept, you will participate in celebrating it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I have a different view of those people than you. I wouldn't call it inherently evil, but I completely stand for your right to say that's how you view it. Yeah. I also am not going to celebrate it, and I don't want society to have to bend to satisfy the psychological need these people have. I want people, go live your life, live however the hell you want to live. If you're an adult and you make that choice, then you deal with the consequences. Stay away from my kids. Don't try to shove men into women's bathrooms or sports, and I'm good. But I am not tolerating any of that shit. And even if I don't completely agree with your take on it, because you're coming kind of from a religious angle there, I still support your right to feel that way as much as I support somebody else's right to choose another life, as long as we leave each other the F alone, right? We cannot have tyranny from either side. Tyranny of the majority is where these always head down. I mean, I think part of why guys like you that come out of that whole Eastern Europe, Soviet bloc, etc., you guys go hardcore libertarian, even compared to libertarians here, because you've seen what happens if you don't. And it's not good.
No, we lived it, Jack.
Yeah.
We lived it. For us, this is not a hearsay. This is not some kind of a freaking, you know what I mean, movie of the horrors, V for Vendetta. We've seen it. We lived it. We watched our parents live it. We know people that went through it and all, that kind of thing. So coming here and having things enshrined in our Constitution and Bill of Rights, you kind of look at it and you go like, you know what? I'm actually Russian, right? So I have very strong feelings about true fascism, right? Nazis, because of what happened, right? Yes, my fist will be clenched, but I believe that neo-Nazi has an absolute right to get on this very platform and express his freaking views. Now, this is very much American Western, or I would say, really fundamental human principle. Action and consequence are not sold separately. It's a package deal. Always was, always will be. So when you talk some kind of neo-Nazi shit, consequences will probably be there. And to me, it's like this, now I'm some people say, like, oh, you're talking shit about the state of Israel. And I go like, yeah, I'm aware of consequences, how some people will perceive that and all that. I'm aware of it. Okay. But you have absolute right to say that you would like to see the rest of the Middle East turned into a glass parking lot, basically calling for annihilation of a few 100 million people. And you have a right to say that. Kind of funny like that coming from a former commie. And then you have these flaggots, American flag waving dudes, pro Second Amendment, freedom of speech, this and that. And they go like, if you speak up against Israel's right to bomb whoever they want, whatever they want, you anti-Semite and your citizenship has to be revoked and you should be kicked out of US of A. Like, are you sure? Because I'm not so damn sure.
Yeah, there is this, it's a tribalism that's like backed up with some kind of a weird, like sacramental component to it. Like that, since this is what I believe, then it's okay to censor others who disagree with what I agree, except I'm against censorship unless it benefits me when it happens. And my view has always been, if the idea is valid, then it should be defendable in public. And if it's invalid, it should be attackable in public. We should solve our differences through rigorous, logical, academic debate. And what both sides that you're describing are doing is literally no different than what the establishment did during COVID.
Yep.
Right? It's the same thing. As soon as you say, it's silence. Right?
It's cancel
the problem
culture.
is what you're doing. It's like when it is something inherently evil, and it's like a tumor in the body, and the tumor, like you feel a lump, and instead of doing something about it, you push the lump back in and pretend it's not there, and it's way more dangerous that way, right? Like just push the tumor inside. We don't want to see it or talk about it. Well, that person's going to die, right? That's going to metastasize, and a lot of these things. Like people think that like the Nazis took over Germany because they were allowed to speak. The Nazis took over Germany in a lot of ways because anything that was in opposition to what was going on was not permitted. It was censored. It was held back. So when somebody stood up that overpowered that censorship, everybody fell in line. Oh, this sounds very familiar to what's going on right now. And all of a sudden there was like a cult around it. And one dominant personality was able to get away with shit that the people that were supporting it absolutely didn't agree with, but all of a sudden they did because now that we've taken the step, we can't go back. Boy, that sounds very, very familiar to me.
Eerily familiar, isn't it? You know, and it's funny because some of our conservative friends, they will say, well, are you guys turning into lefties? And I go, for one, that whole matrix of right versus left, conservative versus liberal, it's such a bullshit bill of goods that we were sold that it's freaking ridiculous to begin with. But that's a whole another rabbit hole that we would require hours probably to go into. But, so-called conservative side, I think they lost the grounding to claim morality. Because they're doing exactly the same thing that the other side's been doing. The cancel culture, silencing the opposing voices, ad hominem attacks on people instead of talking about the substance of the issue, right? It's childish. You kind of look at this, and these are a lot of dudes that are, I'm a veteran, I'm former this, I'm carrying a gun, I'm pro this, I'm pro that, and you go like, but you acting, excuse my language, and it's not referred in the sense of genders or whatnot, but you're acting like a little bitch.
No, it's okay. You said something about forgive my language earlier when you said fuck, and my response was, we use the full beauty and color of the English language here. You are welcome.
I like that. I like that. I'm just trying to self-censor because, being a person that goes to church and all that, my priest goes like, Sonny, you have a lot of good things to say. He goes like, but you do need to clean up your language because it takes away. That's a good one. Yeah, the real political spectrum.
So those that are going to hear it, most of the people are going to hear this on audio only, right? Like what I have up is I learned the political spectrum that he's talking about in school. I remember being in like 8th, 9th grade, somewhere in that range, and the teacher drawing this line on the chalkboard with an arrow going each way, and they put communism on the left and fascism all the way to the right, and then our constitutional democracy in the middle, and then Democrats a little bit to the left and the Republicans a little bit to the right, and the real spectrum is either you believe in the rule of the majority through group, basically mob leadership, which is communism and fascism are the same there, or the right of the individual. That's the real spectrum. Is and then you don't have to worry about like gay rights or trans rights or black rights or white people rights or, Hispanic rights. If you have individual rights, and the individual's right, as long as they're not harming anybody else, is held above everything else, then all this goes away. But you can see why people that would want to control you, that doesn't sound like a good system for them. Right?
No.
That doesn't sound like a very good system at all. Like, if you can get like the two people fighting with each other who are in two countries right next to each other to have more in common than they have different because they use different words to describe their ethnicity, you got everything, right? Like, you got everything, right? And that's a little harder than getting people in totally different demographic segments doing it. So once you get a melting pot like America, man, if you are a mastermind at the control of individuals through the populace, you've got everything. There's a million ways to split this country: rich and poor, male and female, gay and straight, black and white, Hispanic and white, black and Hispanic, and it will never end. Middle income, upper income. It's unending, and it is the number one. It's the baton of the conductor.
It is
controlling the sea of humanity.
Yep. The interesting thing about it, I think that most people miss, and I think this is continuing with the point how we got here, is that, for a while there, I was involved with an anarcho-capitalist community because my wife, Megan, she was hardcore. So we went to Anarchapulco and hung out with people there and, doing events like that. And the whole thing of individualism, the writings from, all the way back from Ayn Rand to more modern writers, take Dr. Ron Paul, he was presenter at one of the conferences and
damn it. We have Sonny lockup right now. Hopefully I'm going to drop him. And you there, Sonny?
Yes, I'm here.
You just went quiet for like 30 seconds. You froze up like Max Headroom.
Oh, funny. All right. Well, anyway, so, we were going to some of those anarcho-capitalist events, and I was deep in the whole individualism, thing.
Yeah.
But then when I started seeing Jack was very, very interesting. They talked big game about individual rights, but relatively little about individual responsibilities. And to me, it started striking because a lot of them were complaining about things that, I want access to this drug, to that drug, to use this. I don't care. I don't use any of that stuff. I'm not a proponent of any of that stuff, even weed. I have my own views for my own reasons. Anyone wants to do it, do it. Again, it's none of my business. I don't care. I have my opinion and views about it, why I don't think it's a good thing, but you have yours, why you think it's a good thing and helpful thing. And in some instances, I'll get it. You know what I mean? When some people with PTSD or whatnot, or many other ailments, that is something that helps. You know what I mean? And mushrooms and things like that, it's been proven and shown that things have very positive outcomes when doing, whether microdosing or whatever. I'm not against it. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
Right. So I was looking at that, and most of the presentations and all that would end up with basically this. I want my full unrestricted freedoms to talk what I want and to consume, ingest, or inject anything I want and distribute it if I want to. Again, consenting adults, I don't care about it. But I'm looking at it and I'm going like, what are your responsibilities? Where do we cap it? And actually, which power caps it?
Mm-hmm.
You come to a playground where 10, 11, 12-year-olds play and you try to slip something in because, hey, freedom.
That's not freedom.
Who controls it? We don't want government to control it because that's giving government more rights, right? None of us want to give more power to the government, right? So you go like, so me as a father, it's okay coming over there and making a little bit of a, kind of like a beef patty looking thing of your head if you try to do that. Oh no, that violates NAP principle, non-aggression principle. Interesting how it works. And I was looking at that and I go like, untempered individualism without understanding that, like it or dislike it, we are social animals. We do live in the society, and we do have certain responsibilities to make sure that society in which we live and our kids will grow functions as good as it can. Now, what governs those principles? I certainly, again, don't want freaking Washington, D.C. or Austin schmucks to govern how we do those things. And then people go like, well, you have to have moral code of your own. Okay, what is it? And this is where you see the divergence, because every individual will go like, well, I want to do this. And then I go like, how is it different from the dude that proclaims himself to be a woman and goes in the bathroom where your daughter is at? How is it different? Because he has individual rights, correct? It becomes funky. It becomes funky because you're like, well, that's just right and that's just wrong. I go like, well, from his perspective, it's the opposite.
You're wrong. Yeah. And now, I think that, like, the thing I just put this up on the screen, and I talked about this a lot when I started the show 17 years ago. I got a lot of pushback from a lot of libertarians in my audience at the time. Every right has a corresponding responsibility.
Yep.
I will defend your rights onto my own death, but I will not defend what you think is your right to interfere with somebody else's right. That's a different thing. And the way I used to explain it is, let's say that I have a gun safe in my house, and I keep my firearms locked in my safe except for my personal offensive weapon that's either on me or near me at all times. And you break in my home, you break into my safe, you steal my gun, and you go kill somebody with it. I am not responsible for that death in any way.
Nope.
I did everything commensurate with my right to own a gun that goes along with my responsibility to prevent it from being taken by somebody that shouldn't have it. If I keep a loaded rifle leaning on a tree in my front yard, and you come by and take that rifle and go kill somebody with it, I am culpable in that death. Maybe not to the level you are, but I bear responsibility in that. And that was going to the extreme to make a point. And then it started this whole cascade. Well, what if somebody breaks in your house and you kept it under your mattress? Right? Man, you're trying to look for a way out of your responsibility. You have any person should be able to look at something and say, reasonably within the confines of how we live, this is a responsible behavior and this is irresponsible. Are there some areas of overlap? Yeah, that's probably the only place the state should be stepping in those gray areas. Like, how do we define that? Like, I don't like a lot of laws that exist, but I understand why they're there, like driving intoxicated or whatever. It's 0.08 the right number. I don't know, but at least we have a definitive number, right? At least we can say, like, this is and this isn't. When people say they can't be held accountable for their actions because they're basically mentally impaired, we have an IQ score of 75. You're 74, then you qualify. 76, you don't. Both of you are really stupid, but, like, we have to have some line in certain things. And all this stuff revolves around being an adult. In our society, right or wrong, the age of adulthood is 18. If I can't enter into a contract at 17, then you can't treat me like an adult in some other way because it benefits you to do so. It's a very, very, very simple thing. And then you get into other gray areas, right? So, like, is it wrong for an adult to have sex with a child? Yes, sure it is. What if the adult is 18 years and 6 months of age and the child is 17 years and 6 months of age? Right. How does that work, right? Like, there has to be some point also where individuals can make judgments that are reasonable based on the culture that they live in, because that's how humans work, whether we want it to be that way or not.
Jack, we are both dudes, right? We both went to school. So when you were 16 or 17, have you had any like a hot teachers in school?
Oh yeah, one. We didn't have a lot of options, but I know exactly the one that would fit that bill.
Do tell me if something happened and that teacher raised the hem of her skirt or whatnot, and you scored.
Yeah.
If you would go like, oh yeah, I was sexually abused.
I wouldn't have.
Bullshit.
I think it's her responsibility not to do it, but I wouldn't have felt that way. I would have been like, hey, man, I got it. Like that. Yeah. I mean, that's how 16-year-old kids are.
You know,
well,
but the thing about it is, I'm not saying that woman who does that slutty kind of thing and you know, has sex with her pupils in school or whatnot, I'm not saying that bitch should not face consequences. Yeah. She should face consequences. My problem is that we projecting to society that this 16 or 17-year-old boy is defenseless victim. Yeah. And especially when it comes to the boys, man, when we projecting that, that's removing their testicles. As far as in the society's eye, you know what I mean? Our men, and 17-year-old dude, I'm sorry, but he has a lot of features of a man. He has a freaking, you know, pubic hair. He wakes up with the freaking pitching a tent, you know, and his voice is coarse and all that stuff, right? So you kind of go like, why are we removing this in presentation, in public presentation, that this dude, while he has rights and he is in the protected category because he's under 18, he also has a responsibility.
Correct. And that's a discussion we don't have enough of, honestly. Yeah. Part of this, though, we were kind of on this, like, what's the difference with, like, chivalry and self-control? Because it can go too far. I've seen guys, I used to be a bouncer in a club for a while, and I've seen, like, some of the guys I had to, like, diffuse and throw out, honestly, they were upset because some guy looked at their chick or something, right? And, you know, if he had come up to her and, like, put his hands on her or something, the guy wouldn't have had to do anything because we would have threw that dude out. Like, that was instantaneous ejection. Like, you're going out faster than ejection out of an F-16 if you do that in a club, right? But these guys were jumping the gun. I don't know, like, something emotionally disturbed with them or whatever. Not, hey, man, this is my girl. What go on about your life? Like, immediately jumping into, like, this conflict. And when we talk about standing up for the weak, that's not what we mean either. Like, there's values to call it a proportional response, right? Like, the response needs to be commensurate with the offense.
You know, Jack, that's probably one of the biggest things. You know, I'm almost finished with my first book. I'm writing the book called Don't Be a Shitty Student. It's taking much longer than I anticipated, much longer.
Yeah.
Original plan was to have like a short 80-page guidebook that grew to be a 140-page book, and now it's a 220. Because as we're going through editing and my run-on sentences of 156 words getting split by my wife, I feel that it loses some of the juice, some of the meaning, so I have to add additional 2 pages to explain that shit. Okay. And it keeps growing, right? But that's one of the things that I talk extensively about, is that part of true manhood is understanding the difference between self-defense and fighting, social violence, and other things. And having enough self-control to separate any kind of emotional response from the work that needs to be done. That is part of becoming a grown man. Anything you do out of anger, while it does have emotional and righteous sounding justification, in essence is wrong. People go like, so what you're saying is you would not pulverize the guy who slapped your wife on the ass in the public? It hasn't happened, but I would want to believe, due to my training and the way I think and what I do, is that no, I would not pulverize. I would certainly not pull the gun and shoot him in the face. Yeah. I would certainly not put him in the double tie wrap and drive my knee, crushing his skull 4 times in a row and leave him disabled for the rest of his life. I do submit that he would probably feel certain amount of pain somewhere, but I think that's where it would end.
Yeah, I would put that in. If I break your jaw, you can't apologize, and you're going to apologize.
You know,
and that's going to be part of this lesson. Like I'm a big proponent of the saying, life is a teacher, but some people are slow learners. But occasionally you get yourself into a situation where the learning that comes from life is accelerated. That would be one of those situations, right? Like, this is not going to go your way, but that's a proportional response. Like, and I don't want to sit in front of a jury because that's where I'm going to end up. Well, why did you crack his head like a coconut on the ground? He smacked my wife's ass. Like, you're going to like, and then who's going to take care of your wife
for the next 7 years while you're in jail?
To the next 70 years.
Well,
right?
whichever.
You kill the guy, right? You know, until you might die in prison, even if you don't get the death penalty, right? Yeah. Life in prison, if enforced, is a death sentence, right? Like, you can't do the thing that you claim you want to do from prison. That's not even just this, right? I tell people that all the time, like, well, we should do this, and we should, in rebellion to the government, like, you can't fight for liberty very well from prison. And then somebody will bring up something like Mandela. It's like, are you Mandela? No, then shut up, right? Like, it's like this is a straw grasping just begins immediately. Like, you have to be smart, both from an ethical standpoint, because I personally do not think it would be ethical to murder somebody in cold blood just because you can, because they slapped your wife's ass.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's not. It's
now,
not
ethical. Raping somebody, especially a kid, you're probably dying. Right. There's a line there. And I don't even know that I should, but I think there is a point for most people. We have a line where, like, yeah, I know I shouldn't, but I'm gonna.
Yeah, and this shows how far removed we are, how far we have to go in our ability to have forgiveness while remaining righteous. You know, my priest in our Orthodox church, he knows that both me and my wife carry full time. And he knows that I bring a couple of my backpacks from SOE that have both medical gear and additional magazines and smoke and flashbangs and other things. You know, he's a former army guy, you know, our priest, and he just said one thing. He goes like, Sonny, it was like, I know you trained. He goes like, as your spiritual father, I just want you to ask one thing: do the minimum necessary. And it goes, if the minimum necessary is to blow that guy's head off because he's coming in with a rifle,
then that's what it is.
Goes, our faith says that for the next 6 months, you're not going to be able to take Eucharist, because even though he was a bad guy, you still took a human life, and he was a child of God. As evil as he was, as evil as his intentions were, he was a child of God. He goes like, we'll deal with that later. We'll pray for you and all that stuff. He goes like, I just don't want any action out of anger, revenge, retribution, or any of that. It needs to be a job to prevent evil from continuing. End of story. And I'm down with it. Yeah. Now, I understand how hard it is. And you know, Jack, what's interesting? The weaker the men are, the less trained they are, the more likely they will overdo it. The more trained they are, the more capable they are, the less propensity for overkill they have.
Yeah. I'll tell you from working in clubs, like when the guy when somebody bowed up on him was like, man, just relax. Yeah. If that guy didn't back down, you're like, he's going to get his ass kicked. Like this, before we even get into break it up, that dude that just said, just chill. That dude is confident in who he is. He knows what he is, and he is not trying to prove himself. The more training a person has, the more capable a person is, the more likely they are to be that person. I don't have to prove myself to you. And the most important thing is to not engage in this behavior, because I don't know what's going to happen. You know, we used to do training. We get guys kind of going with each other, especially the guys that like to grapple. They get on the ground. And we made everybody wear all black shirts for training. And we did that because we would have training knives chalked up. And when those guys would get on the ground, we just draw shit on their back and then stop them and say, take your shirt off and turn it around. There's your kidneys. That's your liver.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's a reality there. You don't know what's going on around you. And that's another reason to keep yourself in check, because when you go that, you know, I saw red stuff or whatever, like you blank out and you focus on something and you don't know what's going on here. And it could be anything from the guy's best friend that's going to kill you. Right. To a cop that sees you as the aggressor and shoots you.
I'm going to say something very controversial here, Jack. When the dude says that I see red, I'm in that zone, you know what you are? You are lacking in masculinity, and you a very feminine dude, because you give in to emotion versus competence. You don't have a man competence, and you fall into emotional room which should be reserved mainly for ladies.
Especially a crisis situation.
Yes.
Right? And if it's not a crisis situation, why are you doing it?
Yes.
Right? So
that is not our job during the violent events to become emotional.
Yeah.
I was teaching classes where I go like, I would do some hard scenarios, home invasion, right? And I go like, so here you are, someone in your family, let's say your dearly beloved 16-year-old son. He's next to you, you upstairs, the bad guy pumps out a couple of rounds, and here's your son, and you look at him and while you still hear these, that kind of breathing, he's gone.
Yeah.
There's nothing else you can do. Right? And I go like, do you know how much training and this will take for you to do the right thing and not do emotional thing that will make you next person to die, and there's no one to protect your other two little kids and your wife? They go like, what would you do? I'm like, depending on the situation, he may be I will be shooting from behind his body. He will be a bullet catcher. So I can take out the bad guy so he cannot do anything to my 3-year-old. And people look, they go like, you're fucking crazy.
That's actually the opposite of crazy. It's completely logical. It's horrible.
It's cold and it's horrible, Jack. I mean, my heart.
But death is horrible. Violence is horrible. One human killing another human when it's not absolutely necessary is horrible. You didn't choose the heart. That's why, the whole facade of fair fighting and shit. Like, I'm not talking about sporting events here. Like, if you're in like a sporting competition, there's rules and there's reasons for them so that you can train realistically yet reduce the propensity of injury, especially serious injury. But if it's a fight, since I am never going to be the aggressor, right? The initial aggressor anyway, then if it's a fight, you chose it. I did not.
Mm-hmm.
The most important thing to me is that I'm going to go home that night and be able to take care of my wife and my grandchildren. That's way more important than you. So if you are the aggressor, then this whole fairness thing is out the window. It is whatever logically leads to the most effective end of the situation as quickly as possible. That's what it's going to be.
And that's what I teach my students. I said, I don't want you to use, because people go like, I'm just going to shoot him. I'm just going to kill him. I'm like, these are all emotional responses. You are being a bitch. I said, here is the main definition. It's not just because of legal framework. Okay. I want you to think about only one thing. You need to make your opponent unable and or unwilling to continue. Period. No more, no less. Unable and or unwilling. And people go like, how can you be so cold? And I go like, it's not cold, it's called common sense. And common sense does not allow emotion. It doesn't give a shit about what you feel, how upset you are, how bad your soul and heart hurts about the loss or the terrible things, or how stressed out you are about your loved one's brain matter being splattered on the side of your face. Reality doesn't give a shit about it. It does not. There is no, reciprocity. There is no reciprocity there, and you have to train for that, and you have to prepare. Sitting on the couch, you're not going to become that man, period, end of story. You need to have what Jag has on his t-shirt, and that is discipline. And you train discipline in very basic way. Every day, you make yourself do that which you don't want to do. Every day, ceaselessly. The easiest way, and you heard me talk about it in my presentations, okay? Give yourself a goal for the next 6 months, 180 plus days, okay? Every day, you will do 200 quality push-ups on your fists. Every day. When I mean quality, I mean slow, all the way down, body straight, the whole 9 yards, on your fists, on the hard surface. 200 push-ups a day, 180 days. Every day, no excuses. I don't feel good. I have a cold. Good, do a push-up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's that. And people go like, well, how is that going to make me a better, stronger man. I'm like, you're gonna rewire yourself to do what needs to be done regardless of how you feel. You're putting feelings and emotional dimension into the back room, and in the front room, you're putting that which is a man who thinks, calculates, and prepares. And that's part of being a man.
Would you talk about kind of the difference between what you call like cosplay versus real competence in the training world?
Sure. So, you know, anyone watching, any of your viewers can right now click on the, open extra tab and go to YouTube. If they're already not on YouTube, then don't stop this live stream. Wait until later, right? And let's say a search on a knife defense, right? And you look at the videos, right? And I'm not talking about knife defense, but I'm talking about the dude who's maybe going to pull out the knife and he's going to do a demonstration. He's some kind of a great master of Filipino or Russian or Brazilian or Martian system of whatever, right?
For sure.
And he does this thing, and the guy attacks him, and he parries him and comes around, and he cuts his forearm, then stabs him in the shoulder, then twists his head, then slices his throat, that takes another two steps, 2 more strikes under his armpit, and then as the guy goes down, another 2 strikes into his groin, finishing with the face strike, with sinking that blade into the face. Granted, it's a rubber or aluminum training blade and all that, but yeah. I'm looking at it. And I go like, all right, point 1, from the legal perspective, anyone sees this video, and I'm not talking you doing it in real life.
Yeah.
One of your students gets in the fight, he deploys the blade, he uses the blade, and then the counselors during the court, they bring up this video. What do you think has happened?
Yeah.
All because of what? Because you wanted your Instagram and YouTube followers to say, dude, look at how brutal Sonny is. That's hardcore, dude. Everyone has a fucking big smiles of adoration about you, and you have a boner because you have public adoration from people you never met, you never will meet, and they'll never come to your training and spend money with you. What the fuck are you doing? You are cosplaying for fame and for your ego to be stroked. And you don't even realize how much damage you're doing potentially to future students or even someone who watches it. Because you're elevating ego and pride instead of pure, disconnected, clean work of whether it's self-defense, knife usage, or whatnot. That's not raising the bar for what the real man is. That's actually lowering it again into a territory of being a emotionally triggered bitch.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And if there's a legal issue there, then there's a real realistic issue there as well. Either you can't pull that shit on somebody or you shouldn't be. Yeah. And what I mean by that is if you can do all that to somebody, you're going against a completely inept, untrained idiot that you could have disabled probably with 1 shot to the head and been done with it. And if you try to do that shit to somebody who's trained, you're going to end up probably on the other end of it. Yeah. I mean, that there's like you, and so that's how a jury's going to look at it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, well, you clearly went over like you had all that skill. Why did you go that far? Right.
And there's so many levels to this cosplay, right? Both me and you and many other, I'm sure your listeners have seen it, right? You go to Las Vegas in January during the SHOT Show, okay. Right? You see tens of thousands of dudes in the scariest black T-shirts with Punishers, with demons, with all kinds of sayings that I'll skin you alive, I'm better at violence than you. All of these. It's basically like a fucking tactical rainbow flag. It really is. It's their
real pride, right?
It's their Pride Month. You know what I mean? Around the SHOT Show or whatnot. And you look at these dudes, right? And I know a number of them because I'm in that industry, right? I know their skill level. I know how weak they are physically. I know how undisciplined they are. Half of them are freaking alcoholics. 30% of them are cheating on their wives. Right there while they're in Las Vegas during the SHOT Show.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I go like, and you are playing here a manhood card? because you have this gold-plated Glock and you have this whatever other accessory that cost $4,000, and you're spending hours on internet doing research on what night vision goggles are better and where's the class so I can shoot a chain machine gun from the helicopter, because I'm sure your neighbor has a helicopter and it's going to be legit skill that you're going to need when the world ends, or Katrina 2 hits your shores, right? I mean, it's absolutely legit. At the same time, you're the same dude who did his last push-up 4 years ago. You are the dude who hasn't been punched in the face in the last 20. Your biggest physical achievement was 25 years ago when you played in the fucking high school football team. You still like the football, but you play fantasy football. That's as much as athleticism as you do. Dude, you don't deserve those tattoos on your neck, nor that scary black t-shirt with the Punisher. You should put a yellow flowery fucking dress and go to Martha Stewart cooking show, because that's where you belong. That's what I mean by cosplay. Sorry, I kind of went a little bit hot on this one.
No, it's all right. One place I've seen that people, though, often think that's what they're looking at, and I know they're not, and you know they're not, is when people see videos of especially a particular piece of training in the Russian art of Systema.
Yeah.
And they see things like an instructor delivering a very slow and honestly not impactful hit and the student responding a certain way. I think that what they don't understand is that training is actually very much real. And all the critiques I've heard of that are always people that watched it but never went and did it. And they see this one little piece of it, or they see somebody like take a legit shot and go down, and then they're like, oh, there was nothing to that. And I think that's another piece of this whole cosplay. Like, because they've seen it over here, they think it's what they're looking at over there, and it's different. I will say that. It is a different thing to train with somebody that teaches that. You mentioned Vladimir Vasily. That's another name that I got from Val. He said, like, this guy's legitimate. Like, if you get a chance to train with him, go do it. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I've had a lot of pushback on that.
Absolutely. It's very easy to speak about it, and I think I'll be able to give analogy to your listeners that more people will connect with it. You know, so when you look at the great vast majority of people out there, the big collective, right, and the way they look at nutrition and, let's say, health. I'm talking like, you know, when I don't feel good, when I have ailment, when something hurts or whatnot, right? So you look out there, right? And you're probably looking at 98% of people whose understanding of nutrition is framed between Taco Bell, McDonald's, and Whataburger.
Yeah.
And then on the weekends for the family time, we go to, I don't know, fucking Applebee's, right? And then we go to Walmart or Target or whatever, right? And we buy, you know, 2 18-packs of some kind of soda, preferably Dr. Pepper. Or those who are really health conscious, they'll go with Coke Zero because that's really fucking good, right? And we'll buy the milk by gallons because it's $2.98 a gallon, you know, and it's 1% fat because it's, you know, it's just fat is bad, right?
Bad, yeah.
And you know, so you get a picture of what I'm describing, right? That's 90% of people. That's their understanding of nutrition. They don't have any ideas what are the things that are being put in your garlic salt, what those things are and what they do to your nervous system, because they are classified as a neurotoxins in Europe and including in Mother Russia. You can go to jail for using that stuff.
Yeah.
Here, it's free for all, right? And then there are crazies like us, right? We grow our own food, organic. We use fucking, I don't know, rabbit piss to do the, you know, and we don't buy chemicals coming from, you know, from the Home Depot. And we're on our knees pulling the weeds, and our tomatoes don't look like they look in the store. They all kind of like crumbly and not pretty, right? And we buy raw milk at $10 a gallon. Oh my God, you guys are gonna die from this and that, right? And we use like homeopathics when we have pain, when we have a burn, when we have a bee sting, or whatever, right? So it's less than 2% of us, Jack. Significantly less than 2% of us. What do you think is happening in self-defense community?
Probably, I got the analogy as you were going there, because it doesn't look like what they expect it to look, then it can't be legitimate.
Yes.
And when they say something like, there's no way that punch had a lot of power to it because he didn't put his hips and his shoulder into it. Well, number one, go get hit. Right? But number two, you're training for the fact that you may not be able to put your hips and shoulders into it. And then go get that guy that you said didn't have any power to put his hips and shoulders into it. When you're a student, you'll see why he didn't do it to his student.
Yeah, I saw, that there is no way that certain essential oil will work on certain ailments until I put it on and it worked. And here I am, tough Russian guy, Spetsnaz, tattoos, body count, and all that stuff, being a fucking proponent for essential oils. That sounds as gay as it can get, right? But
what works.
If it works, it works. And you go to some museums in Western Europe, and you look at the books about, like things, what plants do what. These are books written in freaking 14th, 15th century. And you go like, funny that. They're talking about this.
Yeah.
It's
not knowledge we're discovering. It's knowledge we're rediscovering. And personally, I don't think we're discovering it for the first time. No. I think we're rediscovering it for the umpteenth. I have no idea how many times. Yes. But I'm a pretty big believer of like the theories espoused by people like Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson, that we have had these ebbs and flows of humanity, these peaks and valleys. And that a lot of times I think what causes the valley is we think we're at a peak and we're already on a decline. If you would have come to this country, wasn't a country at the time, this landmass in the year 1200, and just found an average kid, just an average 10-year-old boy, and said, show me around. That kid would have walked through the woods and went, those mushrooms make you see spirits. Those mushrooms are good to eat. Those mushrooms will kill you. That herb over there, if you break it open and put it on a cut, it'll stop bleeding. That herb over there, if you eat that, it'll kill you. If you take that herb and mix it in this thing and dump it in the water, the fish will float. But we think we're more sophisticated? We think we're more educated than that? Are you kidding me? Right?
Oh, but where did you get your doctorate?
Make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at 10, they're advanced. Right?
Yeah, that 10-year-old kid could look at the stars, or if it's cloudy, he could look at the tree branches and take you in the right direction and deliver you to your destination. Today's kid, without this device right here, he cannot make it to the fucking kitchen.
Yeah. And it's not like you can't learn this stuff. Like, I wasn't born like raised by Native Americans in the wilderness or something. But just this weekend, we're sitting, my wife and I are in the pool. The phones are up on the rail. We've been in there who knows how long, have a couple drinks in us. Yeah. And she goes, should we go in? What time is it? I'm like, well, let's see. It's almost the solstice. And I said, it's about 5 o'clock. She goes, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. She goes, how do you know? I said, because the sun's there. It's about 5 o'clock. She goes, get out of here. So we get out of the pool. It was 4:56.
Man, Jack.
It was only like 4 minutes, right? That's not voodoo. That's how the world works. I know my latitude, I know we just came over the solstice. Like, it's not hard, but we don't teach these basic things. If you ask a kid very common, like physical science questions today, when they're like a teenager, they can't answer. Most adults can't.
Nope.
But we think we're smarter than these people from the past.
Yeah.
Right?
The funny thing is that when you said about that 10-year-old kid, when I was growing up in the former Soviet Union, obviously we didn't have all the mushrooms that make you see spirits, but we had some poisonous stuff and we had some really good stuff to eat.
Yeah.
I could point you out at things because that was part of it. We went on vacations. It was not to some resort. Pitched a tent. We started.
Damn it.
Went on the lake in the boat. We caught fish. We prepped it. We cooked it. Am I lost again because I don't?
You were, but we got most of it.
Okay.
We did lose you for a little bit. I
Yeah.
was waiting to see if you're vegged out again, but no, we got most of it. I think what you're saying is like when you went on vacation, basically you would go camping, gather food, collect food, go fishing, prepare the food. And when you were saying that, what I was thinking is like this is also like another reason I think we're weak as men today. We lost that.
Yeah.
Because that was always seen when I grew up the same way. And that was seen as the way that this generation of elders passed down this knowledge to this generation of youth, so that when they became the elders, they could replicate that process. And that ancestral memory was being handed down in a tangible way that could be acted on. And somewhere that broke.
Yes.
Somewhere that broke. And I believe it broke mostly in our country in 1971 when we changed the money. Like everything went to shit. That's where my generation was the latchkey kids, and that seems like, well, that made you really independent. But what it made us was mercenaries. It made us mercenaries that were like, I got to take care of mine. And even those of us who grew up and we were good fathers, at least we thought so, and good husbands, I got to go out. I got to make money. I got to make sure the family's paid for it. If I did that, I've done enough. No. That was how, and we thought that way because that's how we were trained to think. Because we were put in that exact situation. We were the last generation that had that toehold on what you just said, and then it faded into nothingness.
Jack, for most Americans will probably be a very blasphemous thing to hear this, but I will say it regardless. I think that we were sold a lie as to what is American dream.
Yeah.
Because American dream has been reduced to chasing belongings. The houses, the cars, the lifestyle, the vacations, the watches, the jewelry, the designer clothes, the certain appeal, curb appeal, or whatnot. Nowhere did it talk American dream about dads, fathers, making their kids, their sons, tough, making them desirable to really good women. Where that woman looks at him and goes like, I would want this dude to be father of my children. Not a provider, not a fucking doormat, not the one who bends to any wish or any emotional breakdown that ladies may have. I want this dude to be a father to my children because he's going to raise them fucking right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They sold us the bill of goods that 3,000 square foot mansion with 2 acres and 2 Audis sitting in the driveway is American dream. And it's not. I'm not saying having possessions and nice cars and beautiful houses is wrong. This should not be the first thing that we chase.
No.
This should not be the first thing we chase.
Well, like, we also had this like rise of like no fault divorce, and a lot of men our age that grew up in this country grew up watching fathers ripped apart financially and thought, well, fuck that. I don't want to do that. Like a lot of us, we still took the shot and we went in. I'm glad I did. I'm glad I became a father and a grandfather now. But you could see why a young man would look at that and go, I don't want to end up like my dad did, because we stopped valuing the family. And like you talked about the man raising sons, but the man should also be raising daughters.
Yes.
If you're not modeling proper behavior to your daughter, how do you expect her when she's in her teens and early 20s to choose the right kind of man to be part of her life? Like, people like look at you strange when you say this, but I'm like, by the time your daughter's like 14, 15 years old, you should date your daughter. Now,
yes.
I don't mean something perverted, weirdo.
If people think that, they're fucking right off.
You should take her out by yourself, just you and her. You should take her to lunch or take her to dinner, and you should show her what the non-sexual component of a date should be like with a good man, so that she has somebody to look at and go, you're not that person. You don't qualify to be part of my life.
Amen.
And if a man can't raise a daughter, it's just as bad to me that he can't raise a son. Like, you're responsible for your part of both. And this will be blasphemous to some people. And the woman is responsible for her part of both, because you both bring things to the equation that the other one has lesser strength in. Women are more emotional, but that also means they're more compassionate. There's a time to kiss the kid's knee and put the little Band-Aid on it, whatever. And there's a time to go, get up, put some dirt on it, and get back in there. right? There's a place for both of those things.
Yes,
and that's part of the power of a good couple that are properly aligned with each other's goals, is because they are willing to go, like when dad's like, and you see mom come in, you go, what, she's right. And I'm not right for this. I'm just going to shut up right now. She's got this. And when she's over the top, that's when you come in and you go, you know what? No. You gotta pick yourself up and get going. And I'm just talking till I see him move again. There he goes.
Yeah.
You were
it's
locked
awesome,
up again.
No, it's good, man. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. You're good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm really happy we're having this conversation, man, because sometimes it's how would I say, to a lot of dudes, I think it's uncomfortable conversation to have, because a lot of us realize that we probably have skipped number of opportunities to be that and to do that to our kids. I'm divorced, right? I'm divorced after my first marriage. I was married for 18 years. I left my ex-wife when my son Nicholas was 1 year of age. He was 1. And he stayed with her until he was 10, and then she lost the custody, and now he lives with me and Megan, with my new wife, my last wife, right? And I spoke to Nick about it a few times, and he goes like, I asked him, because some people say like, don't you feel bad about the damage that your divorce has done to your son? And I go like, I actually feel blessed that the damage that would have been done to him if he saw what happened if I stayed in it.
Agreed.
And when my boy, 15-year-old, told me, he goes like, thank God you did not stay with my mom. You kind of go like, it hits you, man. You know what I mean? And sometimes you have to take that choice. Yeah, I lost everything, man. Yeah. She kept the 4,400 square foot house in the suburbs of Dallas. She kept the paid off Audi Q7. I took all the debts. I took my vodka collection, my guns, my laptop, a little bit of my porn, and that's it. And that's it, brother. And I walked away with all the debt.
Yeah.
Still drinking out of that cup, trying to recover and all that. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Because I can show my kids that there are lines in the sand. There is dedication, there is marriage, but there are lines in the sand. And you have to know that you have ability, as painful as it may be, as costly as it may be, to make a right choice and not allow self-destruction.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of lessons to pass on to our boys and girls, like you said, and girls. My oldest daughter, she lives in Florida. She goes to college. She's 21. She lived most of her life after I divorced her mom with her mom, besides the 2 years that her mom lost the custody because of her antics. But now she's an independent woman living by herself in South Florida, going to college. She has 1 more year left. But it's interesting to watch the influences, and how kids are shaped by influences of surroundings and parents that may have, especially if it's divorced couple, right, that they have very different moral gradients and all that stuff, because when she just moved here after my ex lost her custody, we were going to church and my daughter puts on a t-shirt with the Playboy bunny. And I look at her and I go like, you understand, we're going to Russian Orthodox church and you have a Playboy t-shirt. And she had like she wasn't able to connect, like, what's wrong with a Playboy t-shirt?
Oh, man.
I mean,
yeah.
You kind of look at that and you go like, I know Sophia is not stupid. She's not stupid by any means. You know what I mean? But certain conditioning, it gets kids to the point where they're no longer able to distinguish appropriate, not appropriate.
Especially like appropriate for the situation.
Yeah.
So I wasn't raised Eastern Orthodox. I was actually raised Ukrainian Catholic.
Yeah.
Which is, it's almost like you took the Eastern Orthodox faith and the Roman Catholic faith and like created this overlapping. There's a lot of
hybrid.
Yeah, it's so I get what you're saying. Like, this would be inappropriate for any house of worship, but
Yep.
you're really off your ken there. I mean, like way outside. And she's obviously not an unintelligent person. It's just that the judgment is impaired because the judgment is impaired by society itself. I think there's a lot of that. What are your thoughts? Like when people listen to me, when I have guests on like you, a lot of the terminology that gets thrown around is alpha males, alpha males, alpha males. I've been told by a lot of people that I come off as an alpha. I do not consider myself an alpha male because I don't have any desire to dominate anybody. And I really don't want to be in charge of something unless I know that I'm the best person for it and I want to do it. There's a term that gets thrown around for this called sigma males. And that's like, you're not a beta. You're not somebody's bitch, but you also are guarded. You believe in your own principles. You take care of your people. You'll do alpha male shit when it's required, but you don't do it just to do it. And then that to me leads to much more of like your term was like a peacemaker, right? And it leads to more of the desire for peace and a willingness to use violence when necessary to obtain peace, with a preference not to have to.
So I'm going to show you something that I just took off the wall here when I stood up. All right. So this is one of the logos that we used in our in the units that I was in. Right.
Okay.
So it has, the beret and the AK and all that stuff, and here in the thing where it says "Победишь себя, будешь непобедим," right? And that was kind of like a cliche that we used in Spetsnaz, and the direct translation of that is "conquer yourself so you cannot be conquered." I don't consider myself alpha male either. I'm just a man. What I'm dedicated to is to win the battle over myself. That's the hardest battle that any dude will ever fight, because we have passions, we have weaknesses, we have all the excuses in the world, and society and system provides us with more and more of that. To have discipline and purpose, to reject all that and keep on fucking grinding and keep on doing what you need to do. And don't give yourself excuses. Well, I have a homestead, thus I don't have time to be physically fit and strong. Or vice versa. I have to go to the gym, so I don't have time to grow vegetables. No, you make time for all of that by conquering yourself. Disconnect fucking TV. Disconnect most of social media unless it is for your betterment, acquiring new useful information, and or marketing, business, making money. We fail in that. I know I do. I still scroll. I still look at things that have nothing shit to do with bettering my life or whatnot. You know what I mean? But that's the daily battle, right? Stop going out and being drunk and wasting money. Make your meals, learn together with your woman, with your wife, with your girlfriend, whatever, to make meals from as close as from scratch as possible. Take pride in washing fucking dishes, because you have dishes as opposed to 50% of the world who doesn't. And you have good food to put on those dishes. Be thankful for that and do a good job. Like a Japanese samurai making tea for 2 hours, you go, tea is a tea, until you try his tea. And it's not the same tea. So take pride in washing those dishes, not just throwing it in the dishwasher. I teach my son to do that. I'm like, you need to learn to do things that you hate as if you love it. That's part of discipline that Mike Tyson, actually it's going all the way back to Seneca. That has been, definition of being disciplined, right? And I look at that and I go like, why is this not being taught in our schooling system? Why most fathers don't teach their sons that? Why most fathers don't take away electronic devices from their fathers? Me and Megan, we had a number of fights. I was actually the one more lenient. I would go like, yeah, I'm going to let Nick use the iPhone for half an hour a day. Megan goes like, nope. And now we're finally in full agreement where we actually took away his ability to do any Snapchatting or any of that stuff. We'll go like, if you're going to talk to people, you're going to have either direct phone call or at the very worst text message. Ain't going to be no Snapchat bullshit, none of that stuff. And that's just, and people go like, man, that's being rough. I'm like, I was not put here to be a father of my boy, to be his best friend. I am a father. And he's going to learn few things like I'm learning to my father, which is obedience, which is discipline, which is following the lead and abiding by the commandments.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, whether it's hard or not, my face does not show much expression that I care. It shall be done. It's a simple, and people go like, man, that's pretty militant approach to raising kids. I go like, you want to see the alternative? Turn on fucking
look. Right. Go look.
Yeah. Go into public school, take a look. You'll see the alternative.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing to hear you talk that way, because I realize like some things that you do that are just inherent to having lived this way your whole life. So I very much, from being a grandfather, would like to be with my grandchildren more like my grandparents were with me, where, you said your dad's not your friend, he's your dad, but your grandparents are kind of your friends.
Oh, yeah.
I have to hybridize that because we take care of homeschool for them. So they're here 3-4 days a week.
Yeah.
I can't be friendly grandpa for that time because it's too much time, which I think my grandson kind of has his head jerked around, because then when we go do something as a family on a Saturday, I'm friggin' grandpa. Like, that shit's your dad's problem and your mom's problem, because they're here now and I can be grandpa, right? But I'm the same way even with my grandchildren when they're here, because, well, you're here to learn. And once you get your schoolwork done for the day, things change a little bit, right? Now you have more freedom. Yeah. But if you're giving your grandmother a hassle and not getting your work done, then I'm the principal, right? If I have to come out of the office, they already know it's not good. Right. And I'm not talking about physical discipline. I'm just talking about straight up discipline. Like, as soon as the door opens, they're like, oh, shit, here he comes. Right. And people say, like, they shouldn't be like that with you. Yeah, they should.
Yes, they should.
Yes, Absolutely. They should. Yes. When the hammer comes, the nail should be afraid.
You know how biblical that is, Jack? Because it is said somewhere in the scriptures. It says, through fear of God, man avoids evil. It's kind of funny that way, and I'm not trying to scare, I'm teaching at a homeschooling cooperative. I'm a physical education coach for the kids.
Oh, that's great for 12-year-olds.
Which is hilarious. Well, actually I have from 3 to 17-year-olds.
Oh,
right?
boy.
Yeah. So I have groups, like 3 to 5 and then 6 to 9, whatever. And it's hilarious, man. It's really hilarious because kids are challenging me to do push-ups, Some kids challenge me to arm wrestle, you know what I mean? They all address me as Mr. Sonny.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm kind of rough with them sometimes. You know what I mean? I'm like, put your damn phone away. You know what I mean? And they're like, oh, Mr. Sonny, I just want to play. I'm like, we're not playing. We're doing push-ups. Stay in there. You know what I mean? And some girl runs off crying to her mom and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then within few classes, I started noticing that some of the parents, interestingly, mostly moms, would walk up to where I'm doing things with the kids, and they would start doing exercises with their kids, participating in it. And then some of the moms walked up, they go like, this is so awesome because this is like first time in their life they're getting discipline.
Yeah.
Their dads are not bad or whatnot, but they've been raised in this environment where discipline is fascism.
Yeah. See, the whole purpose of the fear component is I want you to grow out of it, right? Like I've always said, like parenting, if you're doing it right, is working yourself out of a job. Now, you'll always be their dad or their mom, but that's not what I'm talking about. Parenting versus being a parent, the active component, the setting the rules, the defining the boundaries. If I have to define your boundaries when you're an 18-year-old, I have failed.
Amen.
Right? I have failed because the law says that the day after you turn 18, honestly, the day you turn 18, you can walk out my door, tell me to piss off, and there's nothing I can do about it. Therefore, it is my responsibility to have you prepared by that day for that reality. Even if you don't do it, you need to be capable because you can. Yep. And if we don't train somebody to be capable of a thing at the point that they can do the thing, then they can't do it well. They can't do it responsibly. And that new power comes with a blade that cuts backwards, because that person now can hurt themselves. The same way if I give a person who can't handle money, who's in debt, enough money to pay off their debt, they will probably be worse off in a year than they were when I handed them the money, because the money is power, right? So the power of adulthood is an extreme power when you think about it. One day, you can say, I'll go do whatever I want. I can say, the hell you will. And if you call the cops on me, the cops will tell you, shut up, kid. The next day, you can say the same thing, and the cops will tell me to shut up.
Yep.
That's it. People, we don't actually put enough. I think this is part of why we don't. Now I'm having like an epiphany here, right? This is part of why we're not doing our damn jobs as parents. We don't have enough respect for that moment.
Yeah.
That moment is coming down on you like a brick house falling out of the sky on the Wicked Witch, right? Like, it's way faster than you think. We were bullshitting before we started, and I dropped that line on you. The days are long, but the years are short. And when you're looking at a 14-year-old kid, he's 4 years
away from that line.
My grandson's 14, but he's 14 and a half. He's 3.5 years from that point. And when I'm talking to him about some shit he's screwing up, I always point that out.
Yeah.
You're a year and a half from driving a car. You're 3.5 years from being able to do whatever you want when nobody's telling you otherwise. Do you think you're ready for that? Because if you're not, and you don't need to be yet, but you need to be thinking about it, because it's coming. And I always told my kid too, I always tell him, like, my goal is to every year take away rules. I want to have less rules for you this year than I did last year. And if I don't do that, I'm failing. Because once you have self-discipline, I don't need to apply it anymore.
Yeah. You know, and to me, it's interesting, Jack, when you were talking about it, you know, like half measures, right? I see a lot of parents that go like, oh yeah, you know, when my kid is 15, you know, he's already gonna go and work part-time in DQ or Chick-fil-A or whatnot. Nick asked me, he goes like, can I go and apply to Chick-fil-A? And me and Megan looked at him and we go, nope. And he's like, but that's a job. And I'm like, no, it's you a server who's gonna feel entitled to tips, and you become more of a bitch. That's not to say that job doesn't have its place and people, you know, should not do it or whatnot. I'm like, it's just not for you, my son. I want you to go and try to find someone that fixes engines, does the landscaping, cuts the trees, that kind of shit, you know. And he goes like, but they pay the same thing, like $12 an hour or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, what's the problem? What's the problem? You're not going to become rich of these jobs. You're not going to save up for a freaking Ferrari from these jobs, dude, okay? You're going to learn something about yourselves, and you're going to gain skills and understanding of how heavy responsibility is when you start to adulting without my support.
What was your first job? Like your first real job, like where you had a paycheck?
Oh, I don't know if I should talk about it. And
Was it the military? Was that like your first job?
Jack, the interesting thing about it is that I know it's weird, right? I never really had a job until the last year before I came to United States.
Okay.
I was with groups of people that were doing things, but there was no paycheck or contract or
I got you.
Or health insurance or rules or home or you know, human resource department, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But for about a year, and it wasn't really again a job, but I was just helping myself to make money. We had this store that was we would be selling like a high-end stereo equipment, high-end watches, things that I myself would go to Dubai and Abu Dhabi and buy it there and bring it and resell it for profit.
Okay.
But I would have a space where I can display that, you know, Nakamichi stereo system or a Rolex, you know, Sky Dweller in the nice, you know, lit up display case or whatnot. And then I sell it and then I make my profit and I give 10% of profit to the people who own the building and provide all that. And that was it.
Okay. Okay. Just
so
when you're talking about like what kids' first job, like I'm just thinking like my first job is I scrubbed the kill floor in a turkey farm.
Yeah.
When I was 16 years old, my first job, it wasn't really a job in the way I mean, because I didn't get like a tax form or anything. But my first actual job was I pulled parts at a junkyard. Right, and it was like a great job. I worked for a dude like this is as redneck as it gets. Right, the dude's name was Muskrat Purcell. What's his real first name? No one knows. Right, no one knows. Right, like his name was freaking Muskrat. That's what everybody called him. I never hardly saw the guy. Like I would show up on a weekend, and he would have a list of parts to pull, and I would pull the parts and put them in bins. And my payment was cash. It was in a drawer. I had a key to the door and a key to the drawer, and I would take my cash and I would fill out the form of everything I pulled and where it was. If something couldn't be pulled, I would write down that like it was actually damaged or whatever it was. And then I would show up next week and do it again. And I think there is something valuable to that kind of first work experience, something that you have to physically do. And also something like there's really not anybody there making you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like when, even the turkey farm is like, okay, clean all this shit. Bye. Right? When you said you were done, they would check and see, like in the military, like cleaning your weapon, like problem, fix that. Okay, now you can go home. Right? Yeah. There's a humility of that kind of work too. Right? Like, and then you don't fall into this trap of if you don't go to college and get a blue collar, a white collar job, you're a loser or something. You might still choose to take a career path that way, but you're not susceptible to the manipulation anymore. And you also realize like, okay, if I lose what I have, I'll go do that again. Whatever I have to do to feed my family, I'll do it. If I have to drive friggin' Uber and Lyft, right, I'll do it. It doesn't matter. If I have to shovel coal again, I used to do that too. If I have to shovel coal, I'll shovel coal. I'll do whatever it takes to take care of my family. Yeah. Where we have a lot of men now, they wouldn't do whatever it takes. They'll say the words, but if they end up out of work, they won't do any kind of that shit. They're not going to do that.
There are young men out there that they say without $20 an hour, I'm not even getting out of bed. I'm like, you'll stay in your bed and your bed will become your coffin.
Yeah.
You know, when I was in protection business, Jack, there were people that would go through, like Executive Protection Institute, get their certifications and all that stuff, right? And they expect that, someone in the business like me, who's been in the business for a number of years, just out of the blue, I'm going to find out what a gift from God these new graduates of Institute are. I'm going to call them up and offer them $550 a day job with per diem and everything else, right? And they would be like flabbergasted. They go like, dude, I've been sitting by the phone for 6 months and I haven't received one single call. I'm like, how many did you make?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I left few messages to you, and I'm like, yes, and I didn't respond because you are not qualified. Hint, hint. How do you get qualifications? I said, this guy right there, John, right? He does a short gigs for celebrities during the concerts, big concerts. I said, he needs help, and it's probably not even going to be paid job. You're going to be there for 6 hours, basically working crowd control. But people pretty high up in the hierarchy of business, they watching you. They watching your dedication. They watching your professionalism. And guess what? You do 5-6 gigs like that, I may give you a call because John will call me. Hey, I saw this guy, Jack. He's fucking straight. You know what I mean? Shows up.
Yeah. No,
shows up early, dedicated, pays attention, always looks crisp, always brings all his gear. Dude, you can put him on the entry position sitting outside of one of the CEOs, fucking whatever, residences, sitting in the car protecting the perimeter. Yeah, it's not maybe going to be $700 a day job. It's going to be $350 a day job, but that's more than sitting by the phone and waiting, right? And you explain that to dudes, and they're all rolling their eyes. They're going like, well, I was anticipating that as soon as I get my paper, I'm pretty much, highly sought after professional.
No, you're not. You haven't done anything yet. You haven't earned a reputation. You haven't demonstrated capability, and you don't have experience. Mm-hmm. Really, really simple. And that's another part of I think we failed young people is that they don't have any expectation that it's supposed to suck, because we have so many people that they're mid-20s, right out of school, whether it's some kind of vocational training, whether it's college, whatever. And they're like, all I can find are jobs that pay $18 an hour. Shut up and take one. What do you mean that's all you can find? Like, oh, I can't afford a house. Do you think I could afford a house when I was 22? Right? I mean, really, like, do you think I thought it was easy when I was playing? There was this ethos not that long ago that whatever that first opportunity you got was, you took it and you maxed it out, and then that gave you experience. It gave you a work history, but it also connected you to other people, kind of what you were alluding to. And those other people are always part of a network, and that network is an opportunity for the next step. And that's how it's always been. That's how it will always be. It's never going to change.
Those who have ears.
That we're not teaching that reality now. We're telling people, get your student loan, go to college, pay it off, it'll be fine. That's the whole expectation now. And you'll be great, you know. And it's just not reality.
Jack, I want to ask you, because you're American, you know, you're born and raised in this country and all that stuff. Do you think that actually a lot of people of many generations, not just this last generation, but they really lack reading skills, right? Because when I read, you know, what are my rights? You know, I have, you know, the liberty, life, and pursuit of happiness, I believe, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if most people did not catch the part of pursuit of, and they just read happiness.
It's 100% dead on observation. You have no right to be happy. You have a right to pursue your happiness.
Yes.
That's what you have a right to do. And I really feel like it is people like our age bracket, born and raised in this country, that we live at right where the cliff was, where that fell off. And about half of us get it, and about half of us don't, but half of us not, was enough to just ruin the next generation, to just break the whole continuity of flow of that understanding. I think if you would have asked my grandfather about that, he would have told you the same thing. Absolutely, you have a right to pursue it. That doesn't mean somebody's going to give it to you. My father would have told you that. I will tell you that the next generation, I think it's 80 to 90% the other direction. I should be happy. I mean, I hear people make arguments all the time, and when they're pushed back on, what they always say is something to the effect of, I just feel.
I just feel.
And once they say, it doesn't matter what comes next, I just feel that, and anything that follows comma that is going to be something retarded.
Yes.
I'm sorry. It's not going to make any sense to anybody that understands how the world actually works. This idea that, well, everybody should just have a nice place to live and everybody should have food on the table. It's all a wonderful freaking fantasy. And if we ever get to a place where it actually can be, and we can balance it with not making people entitled to it, that would be great. You know, it's like Star Trek shit, right?
Yeah.
But in Star Trek, it's a post-scarcity fantasy. They have a little magical crystal that makes more energy than anybody would ever need. And they have magical machines that, like, oh, you want food? We just make it for you. Okay? If we ever get there, we can have that conversation. That is not how the effing world works. And you're going to have to put effort in for effort out, and intelligent effort. The other side of this is we've also convinced people, like, if you show up, you're working. No, right? Like, no. Being there does not equal working, right? Like, the 2 hours that you spent at the coffee pot talking to your friend Bob was not working. Even though you were paid for it, it's not working. And so they think they work hard, but they don't. They think they're underpaid, but I think a lot of people in this world, like, they think they're highly underpaid. And if you said by hourly rate, when this person's working, are they underpaid? The answer would be sure they are. But if you actually say, well, how many hours a week does this person work? And divide that by what they get paid a week, they're probably overpaid.
Yes.
Because they're working 20 hours a week, not 40.
But Jack, think about how screwed up this is, right? Because they'll throw at you phrases like, the good one is living wage.
Oh, yeah.
Then the other things that I think are a little bit more, even more evil, right? When we were talking about, you know, pursuit of happiness versus being entitled to happiness, right?
Yeah.
Be happy with yourself the way you are. If you cannot handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. Think about how, and I'll use the religious term, how satanic these things are. Because it gives you an excuse to be at your worst and be entitled to be treated well. It gives you an excuse to be fat, lazy, out of shape, and sick, and remain happy with yourself while you taxing the whole society, your loved ones, other family members to provide, to take you to doctors, to do this and that. How screwed up this is. But yet we're talking about happiness. And we expect that happiness to come from without, and we don't do shit to build it from within.
Yeah.
Which takes a whole lot of fucking work. A whole lot of work. So, I don't know, man. It seems like a lot of things over time got twisted, and they got kind of like adjusted to fit agenda that I don't believe is guiding us in the good direction.
Yeah. If you really want your brain to bend around that one, if you go back to the original draft of the Declaration of Independence, the original line was in the first draft was life, liberty, and property. It didn't even have the word happiness in it. They scrapped. It was Ben Franklin and Jefferson together scrapped the word property because it was incredibly divisive between the northern and southern colonies when it invoked the concept of slavery, which was never the intent of the word, but it was agreed that there was no way around the connotation, and they were trying to cobble together. So it was really that you have a right to your life, your liberty, and property. And the way they explained property in a way that didn't have that divisive center to it was the pursuit. And they couldn't say pursuit of property because it would be the same thing, right? Same problem. So it's pursuit of happiness. The things that will bring joy to your life, you have a right to pursue them. And then by that very nature, that means that which you pursue and you rightfully acquire, you have the right to keep.
Yes.
Now, you wouldn't want to teach that today because people might start asking some questions about things like property tax, among other things, right? Like,
oh, that would be a very dangerous conversation to have, Jeff.
You know what? Why can't we teach the principle of non-aggression? Because if we did that, that would cause a whole other, like, if you imagine if we taught 2 generations of school children the principle of non-aggression and
what it really means.
Right, and the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as intended, that would destroy everything about the cabal.
Yeah,
that's why you must be silenced. You have to be called a bigot. You have to be called a Nazi, or whatever. Whatever the slur of the week is, that's what you are when you go against the thing. I do want to do something fun. I've been doing with some of my guests. We're almost 2 hours now, so we can get on with it. But I've been asking all my guests recently 3 questions provided by artificial intelligence.
Oh,
okay, with a complete understanding of who the guest is before I ask it to do this. I ask it for 2 serious questions and 1 just for fun. So here's ChatGPT's questions for Sonny Puzikas. In your view, what is the first step a man should take if he realizes he's been living passively or without direction? That's not bad, is it?
Man, for ChatGPT, I'm feeling like artificial intelligence is trying to crush me here. What is the first step the man should take upon realizing? I think the first step the man should take upon realizing that he has been screwing anything up is to ask himself the most universal question, which is why I have been doing this. So you realized you're doing something wrong. Now you need a reason. You need a good dissection of why you chose to do so. Because if you don't know, there's a saying that why gives the substance to the what. Because if we just know what, but we don't understand why, it's just that floating whatever. You know what I mean? It's a consumerism approach, right? Once you understand why you've been procrastinating, being lazy, not taking care of yourself physically or whatnot, you're probably going to dig out that you are not alpha male. You're probably going to dig out that you are lazy. You don't have dedication. You don't have discipline. You don't have all these other things that make that whatever the fuck you think alpha male is. And then you're going to come to crossroads to make a decision. Do I want to change that? But because without knowing why you are what you are, why you are a shitty man, a shitty student, a shitty husband, you will not change that. It's like coming to a doctor and going like, doc, I feel bad. Give me something.
Yeah.
No, he's gonna he's going to have to define what is feeling bad. Is that a headache? Is that a muscle ache? Do you have some kind of a inflammation or whatnot to give you some kind of shitty pharmaceutical solution, right? So he still needs details. So if you know that you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you need to find out why you weren't doing the right thing. That's my answer to ChatGPT.
I think that's a great answer. Determine the problem before you take any corrective action and make a choice, right?
Yes.
So next question, how do we balance the need for strength and toughness with humility and emotional control, especially when raising our sons?
I think ChatGPT did a very, very shitty job because it's very, very easy question.
Okay.
If you are truly seeking strength and competence, especially in the field of dealing with violence, that often itself will make you humble. The process itself humbles dudes. Now, of course, there's a variable there. Where do you go for that? I mean, if you go to your local, shopping mall, Taekwondo studio where you have 6-year-old black belts, I don't think that much humility will come out of that training, right? But that is also, a task of a man, right, to do your homework. What is the competence? What is true strength? True strength with a bunch of dudes standing around while you're in suspension shirt with the belt and all that stuff, bench pressing 375 with everyone screaming like they just scored the fucking Mega Millions victory. That's not strength and humility. That's pride and number of pounds that you can lift in very artificial or limited environment. Humility is found when you put in the position of weakness. So when I make you tired for 30 minutes at the beginning of the class to the point where you cannot raise your arms, and now I go like, now you're going to do wrestling.
Yeah.
You will be humbled.
Yeah.
When you're ready to shoot and you a masterclass IPSC shooter and you hit a group about yay big any day, but then I punch you in the face or solar plexus and you cannot take your next breath. You're in panic because you're going to die. And I go like, you have 2 seconds to put 5 shots. Only one of them lands on the paper. That's humbling because that's your real performance under duress, stress, when shit is not in your favor. That humbles you, and hopefully it humbles you enough to seek other avenues to improve your performance. So I think you don't have to do balancing act. If you choose the training right, and if you're a good student, I think training itself is the act of humility.
Okay. Now, the fun one. I thought this was really creative too. If you could drop into any historical warrior culture for a week, basically you had a time machine, right? And you could just train and observe as part of that warrior culture, which would you choose and why?
This is going to be very biased on my part because of my genetics and all that.
Okay.
I would probably choose the warrior monks of the 12th, 13th century in ancient Russia.
Okay.
And when I say warrior monks, these were the people that lived a ascetic lifestyle in the monasteries, and they only left monasteries when Russia was invaded. They would saddle up, pick up the armor, and go fight, the best warrior of Genghis Khan's hordes, kill him, and win the battle, and go back in the monastery, never to be seen again. I would like to sit with these people to understand their level of discipline and dedication. Why do they choose monastic lifestyle, extreme asceticism, where it's basically bread and water and prayer and gardening and hard work? I would want to know that. I'm not saying that I would follow it because I'm probably not strong enough to follow that kind of asceticism. But to me, there are signs of a strength there, strength of character, strength of spirit, if you will, that I look at it and I go like, that's not just inspirational. That's a shining that's a house on the that's a shining house on the hill.
Gotcha.
As far as manhood.
It's pretty interesting. I think for me, it would probably be samurai culture.
That would be my second choice.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? But for me, I would want to be like, I don't know, we're somewhere like the Edo period or something. Like, I can't remember the guy that unified Japan and then was dumb and decided to invade China through Korea. I kind of want to go after that phase of things, even if I'm just hanging out. Because what happened was that whole culture got some humility after that and kind of retooled. And I wish I could remember the emperor that did that. He was the first guy to totally unify all the factions in Japan. Yeah. And then he's like, well, what do I do next? And he's like, I know, I'll invade China. And like, everybody's like, no, dude, no, don't do it. No, I know what I'm going to invade China. And then they look at, and like all his generals try to come up with a plan. And they're like, really, there's no good way to do this with the equipment of the time unless we go through the Korean Peninsula. So they go to the Koreans and they're like, we want to invade China. And they're like, good luck with that. We don't advise that. And so they decide then, well, we'll just invade through Korea anyway. So they land on like the southern tip of the Korean Peninsula and they like have no resistance. And the Koreans let them get like halfway through the country and then they just converge and just slaughtered them. And it turned into like a 10-year conflict. And the Japanese went home and there was a later occupation of Korea, but they were unrelated. But that time in the middle, that would be the people I'd want to spend time with, because the entire purpose was to become a warrior in service to your leader. Yeah. And that was more important than any other piece of it. But yet you were also expected to be a gentleman. Yeah. You were expected to keep your home at a higher level of status than the people around you, even though you might not have any more money. If you were like a low-ranking samurai, you were expected to live a certain way and to maintain a certain level of efficiency. And you still were responsible to farm your land. Yeah. You were responsible to become literate when many of the people around you weren't. You were responsible to have other skill sets beyond that of a warrior, but yet you were supposed to be perfection as a warrior and willing to die for your cause. I don't know that I would necessarily want to stay there, but if I was going to be dropped in for like a month to learn from and train with, that's kind of where I'd want to go. Cool, man. Well, I learned something about you, so that's good too. Yeah. Man, I've had a great time talking to you, Sonny. We definitely should try to do something in the real world with our folks at some point together. We kind of talked about that. I was going to ask Sonny folks to come to TSP 25, but he's booked way out through the end of the year right now, but maybe next year and maybe something else in between. Yeah, well, 2026, the days that you told me, I already put on my calendar, so I'm not book anything. And, once you know exactly that's what it's going to be, then you tell me, and then we'll hammer out the details. But for now, I'm going to keep those dates open. So that's that. But yeah, I mean, folks, again, I met Jack. I've known of Jack just like he's known about me before I met Jack. He's a known quantity in in the circles of people that I hang around with and students that learn from me, and some of my friends. John Willis knew about you long before you met John Willis, and we talked about it. And, so then first time meeting Jack in one of the events and all that was pretty cool. And then I already knew that he's Texan. So I'm like, yeah, by Texas standards, we're kind of freaking neighbors, but yet we are meeting in Tennessee for the first time. Right. Yeah. And, I appreciate what you do, man. It's a really important job. It's really important to bring the knowledge that you bring to people. We need more of that. So please don't stop. Keep doing this. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to work my lips during these 2 hours here on your show. Well, man, thank you again. And I will say that if you ever want to come on back and talk about any subject, just let me know. The door will always be open. Though for everybody, the door is closed until about mid-August because we're booked through September right now on guests. I try not to book guests out too far because life events happen and things get to you. Yeah. But the guest form will be back up mid-August, and that's open to anybody that wants to apply to be on the show. Sonny, thank you. Thank you, Jack. All right, folks, real quick, let me wrap up, and I will go quick because that was a long episode, but it was a hell of a great one, I think. I also want to let you guys know you can always help support us by doing your online shopping at tspaz.com. That's TSPAZ, tspaz.com. And this product is going to have very little to do. I think, well, I don't know. Teaching kids to build shit is pretty important to being a father, I think. But my item of the day today is actually an item that's on sale, like a deal of the day sale from DeWalt. And I am a DeWalt guy, and I know not everybody is, but if you are, it's the cordless jigsaw, and this is like their top end, brushless tool. It's on sale for about 64% off retail at $137. And this is what I can tell you about jigsaws. When you start like outfitting your home shop, it's the last thing you buy from cordless power tools. Like everybody buys a drill, and if you're smart, an impact driver and a circular saw, and a sawzall. And all the other stuff, and it's just kind of the one. It's never in the 3 or 4 item sets, and I don't really need it. And then you get one, and you go, why the hell didn't I do this a long time ago? So this is a good day to do it. I keep this item on a price watch. The last time I ran it as an item of the day for a sale, like a deal of the day sale, was March of 2024. DeWalt is not big on sales. DeWalt is very big on protecting their retail and street prices. So when they do drop something down like this, it's a good time to check it out. And if you don't buy stuff online or whatever, you buy locally. Whenever it's just not about me. It's about you guys too. Whenever you hear me bring a DeWalt sale around, odds are it's on sale everywhere. Like it's on sale at Home Depot and Lowe's and all those other places too, because DeWalt kind of runs it uniformly, like tells people when they're allowed to do it. Like you can't just mark down DeWalt tools and stay a DeWalt reseller. They're very protective of that street price. So when they do a deal, if you need the tool, get the tool. And again, if you jigsaws, guys, I just say that is, if you have all your tools for your shop and you don't have a jigsaw yet and you're on a different brand, keep an eye on your own tools and pick it up when it's available. All right, guys, with that, let me go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much for tuning in today. As a reminder, hey, it's good that it went long today because there isn't a show tomorrow. We're taking some time off. I'm going to spend some time with those grandkids tomorrow. And since it's summer, I get to be Papa Jack instead of Overlord Jack. So I'm going to enjoy that. I hope you enjoy this upcoming holiday time with your family as well. Take care, guys, and I'll catch you next week.